Hello and good evening. Welcome to tonight's edition of Conversations with. Our guest is Dr. Norman Shealy. We're so fortunate to have him, and I'll have some more information about him in just a moment. First of all, a word from our sponsor, as they say. This is a production of Edgar Cayce's Association for Research and Enlightenment. Edgar Cayce was one of America's most influential mystics and psychics, and many of his readings dealt with health and bringing people back to health. And that's going to be one of the things we talk about today. If you would like to learn more, go to www.edgarcayce.org. We do have study groups that are meeting virtually and throughout the US, including here in the Southern California area. I'm your host, Joy Scott. I've been involved with the A.R.E, the Edgar Cayce group, for a long time. I'm helping to coordinate activities here in Southern California. And I'm also an author. Just wrote the book called Magenta Nation about bringing together our country, which is so incredibly important right now, and looking at how we can do that on a spiritual basis as well as an intellectual one. And the Conversations With series is a monthly series of dialogues with leaders in spirit and science, talking about healing ourselves and our world. So you're welcome to join us every month. So back to tonight's guest, Dr. Shealy and I first met many years ago through the A.R.E clinic when I was coordinating the annual medical symposium, and he was always a keynote speaker. So I've been able to hear his wisdom and his insights and experience over a period of many years. He's an expert on the Cayce readings. He is trained as a neurosurgeon and also as a PhD in psychology. Helped to create the concept of holistic medicine, which now we call alternative medicine or integrated medicine. But he was, along with Dr. Gladys McGarry, were the two pioneers who actually started the first association for holistic medicine. He is now the president at Shealy-Sorin Wellness and the Holos Energy Medicine Education Center. Dr. Shealy is an inventor. He's got 14 patents in energy medicine. He's published 36 books, including a number of research articles. The areas where he specialized are many: holistic pain management, rejuvenation, stress reduction, opioid addiction. He really has such a vast breadth of knowledge and experience in health. And that's going to be our focus today. In a Q&A format, we will be talking with him for a while and then open up to questions and answers from the audience. So welcome, Dr. Shealy. We'll come back.
Always great to be with you, Joy. Thanks.
Okay, so and here you are live from your home, and I'm live from my home, and distance is not a factor in having these conversations. I'm so glad that you agreed to join us. The first thing I wanted to ask is about your experience with the Edgar Cayce readings, and you have been working with them for decades, and particularly their application to health and spirituality. We're in a time where, of course, health is a serious concern. It always is, but especially now. What do you think are the most important applications from the Cayce readings that we should be paying attention to today?
Well, I think his advice on diet, exercise, and spirituality are top of the list. Obviously, there are many variations, but for instance, the American diet is really horrible. 80% of the food available in this country is what I call pure junk. And it is, it's hard to be healthy when you eat junk. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, we don't really have a lot of people focused on true spirituality. There's more dissension than there is compassion and working together. And only 10% of Americans actually get enough exercise to be healthy. So 97% of Americans are missing, 97.3% are missing 1 to 5 essential health habits.
So what do we need to do to get these health habits back? Like, say, for example, with our diet, is it, besides choosing the fresh fruits and vegetables, like Casey said, 80% of our diet should be fresh fruits and vegetables. How can we change our diet to make us more healthy?
Well, I personally went to McDonald's in 1962 when it first opened in Cleveland. I took one bite and I spit it out, and I've never been back. I have not visited a fast food restaurant. They use monosodium glutamate. I also don't visit Chinese restaurants because they load food with monosodium glutamate. Monosodium glutamate is actually a poison to your brain. It is addicting and it damages the brain. White rice is not a food. It's just as bad as eating sugar. So I avoid those kinds of things. In the grocery stores, I shop on the outside aisles only. On the center aisles, the only thing I might consider is a bottle of fruit juice if it guarantees me there's no added sugar in it.
Okay. And we know that, as you mentioned, with the exercise, that's one of the hardest things I think for people to get with today. But how much exercise should we be getting?
Well, the minimum for health is 30 minutes, 5 days a week. Now, personally, I do 2 hours, 7 days a week. I like it. I
Hmm,
enjoy it. And at 88 years of age, that's not bad.
that's not bad at all. And you mentioned about spirituality. And Casey had a lot to say about that in terms of meditation and his guidance for living. What advice do you give people for taking a more spiritual approach that will also help their health?
Well, to me, I think it's important to recognize that you are a physical incarnation of the real you, which is your soul. And
Hmm.
your soul communicates with the divine and God through the spirit. So every day, in every way, I am focused on the will of the soul. In fact, actually, I just finished a new book called The Will of the Soul,
Hmm.
which I go into great detail about that with a number of quotes from Casey.
Okay. I just have to ask you, how then do we tune into the will of the soul? That's a
Ah,
very interesting
here's
concept.
the way I look at it. The physical body has a will to live. We need air. We can't live without it. We need food and water. We need certain, shelter and clothes and that kind of thing. Once we have those, the personality has what I call the internal will. The internal will is a desire to accomplish something. And my first internal will at age 4 was to become a doctor.
Mm.
At age 16, that changed it. I want to become a neurosurgeon. And by the time I was in medical school, I was particularly interested in the physiology, the electricity, the chemistry of the brain itself, and the anatomy even of the brain. And once upon a time, I had an internal will to be a professor of neurological surgery. So when I finished my neurosurgical residency, I went on the faculty at Western Reserve Medical School in Cleveland. And I was able to do wonderful research there. That's where I came up with my first two major ideas of uh, transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation, or TENS, and spinal cord stimulation, which are used still all over the world. However, I did not like the bureaucracy. The chairman of the department was an alcoholic. And I don't know if you ever worked on an alcoholic, but they're extremely capricious and erratic. And after 3 years of that, I gave up that internal will. I didn't want anything to do with bureaucracy. So I went to a private clinic, one of the largest ones in the country. And it was great until they hired an ex-colonel to become over everything. And he put the clinic on 24-hour time instead of our usual 12-hour time. Again, bureaucracy sucks. And I left it in 1971. I decided I'm going to have nothing to do with any bureaucracy. I want to run my own life as much as I can. So since 1971, I have been independent of any organizing company. I
Mhm.
don't want anything to do with them. Hospitals, no, no way. They're just as bad. In fact, I wrote a book called Third Party Rape.
Mm. Well, you have a strong will of the soul, obviously, that you had these goals even, when you were so young, and finding your path. Do you also find the spiritual practice like meditation is useful for attaining health?
Interestingly, in 1972, when I visited the A.R.E, it made some major changes in my life. I had my first out of body experience floating
Mm,
up above an audience of 200 people below. And there was a lecture on autogenic training and on biofeedback, which hadn't even been published yet. And autogenic training, in my experience, has been the most powerful meditative and self regulation technique in the history of the world. There are now 28,000 scientific references on the benefits of autogenic training. It was developed in 1912 by a German psychiatrist. In those days, hypnosis was really popular. And he didn't like the idea that his patients became dependent upon him. So he put them into trance slowly and asked them what they felt as he got deeper and deeper. And it can actually put you into stage 4 hypnotic trance, which is total anesthesia.
mm.
I introduced that technique with my chronic pain patients and practiced it myself. And it was so important that in 1974, I went back to get a PhD in psychology to understand this whole concept of self control, self regulation. And that led me to develop something I now call biogenics, which is the origin of life. I have 68 different meditative exercises that I developed from basic autogenic training.
So if our attendees today wanted to access those techniques, are these one of the books you have written?
Well, yes, actually, the first book, my layer size or public vision of my dissertation was 90 Days to Self Health.
Uh-huh.
Now, if they want that, they can actually go to my website, normshealy.com, and sign up for my free email newsletter and download a copy of 90 Days of Self Health or a copy of Autogenic Focus, which is basic autogenic training. And
Okay.
they're free.
Okay, great. I wanted to ask you too, everyone's concerned today about building our immunity and being as strong as we possibly can. What particular advice do you give people who are interested in strengthening their immune system?
At the top of the list is vitamin D3. The average adult who weighs at least 100 pounds should be taking a minimum of 5,000 units of vitamin D3 daily, or 50,000 if you weigh 100, under 140, 50,000 units once the first, 10th, and 20th of the month, or if you weigh over 140 pounds, 50,000 units once a week works fine. I've personally been on that once a week thing for over 12 years. You also need some K2. Now, under ordinary circumstances, you only need 100 micrograms of vitamin K2. But in a situation like today, I actually take 30 milligrams of K2 because it markedly enhances the ability of D3 to control your immune system. Second to that is vitamin C. You must have a minimum of 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams a day of vitamin C. And when you increase your vitamin C that much, you also need more B complex. So everyone should be on at least 25 milligrams of B complex. Finally, you need vitamin A. Now, originally, vitamin A was cod liver oil, but you could get toxic from too much of cod liver oil. But if you take astaxanthin, Astaxanthin, I take 30 milligrams every day. That combination is the foundation for immunity. Now, the other thing is a positive attitude. You can't afford the luxury of negativity.
Hmm. And that's very important today. I think a lot of us are concerned about so many things. And I was reading an article about gratitude. A person was saying it's really hard to feel grateful, for when these things are happening, but to just be grateful for being here and being grateful for the good things that we have is the key here, and that helps a lot with positive attitude, with those feelings of gratitude.
I totally agree. One of my favorite statements comes from Olga Warhol's husband, Ambrose. Every thought is a prayer.
Mm.
Thinking sets in motion spiritual forces to bring about change in body, mind, emotions, companions, hopes, and despair.
Mm. Um, I want to go back to something very important you said about your interest in energy medicine and electricity and the plasticity of the brain. Being a neurosurgeon, of course, was a specialization of yours. Can you tell us about some of the findings in energy medicine, which is this new frontier, although you've been involved in it for quite some time, but for most of us, it's a new frontier that we should know about extending our own lives and maintaining our health?
Well, again, the great harbinger, if you will, of disease is anxiety and depression.
Mhm.
Both of them block the most important hormones in your body. The most important hormone, to some extent, is DHEA, or dehydroepiandrosterone. DHEA. The average person peaks in manufacturing DHEA at age 25, but because of cumulative stress, by age 40, most people have already lost 20% or more, and by age 80, the average person has lost 90% of the DHEA they had at age 25. That predisposes you to every known disease because you don't have the anti-stress hormone. Now, my favorite statement about that one is make it, don't take it. There are there are a number of techniques for making your own or restoring your ability to make your own DHEA. I have developed those over the last 20 years. One of those is a circuit in the body that I call the ring of fire. Stimulating the ring of fire raises DHEA 60%. The second one is magnesium. Interestingly, 80% of Americans are deficient in magnesium. Magnesium is deficient in our soil, and taking it by mouth is not very effective. Interestingly, doctors often combine magnesium with calcium. That's great, except the calcium prevents you from absorbing magnesium if you take the gut at the same time. Protein and fat and calcium all interfere with the absorption of magnesium. But magnesium on the skin, magnesium lotion, which I discovered 20 years ago, restores your DHEA. It raises it another 60%. And the combination of vitamin C, 2,000 milligrams, with 1,000 milligrams of MSM. MSM is actually the oral form of sulfur, better than DMSO. And you put 1 gram of MSM with 2 grams of vitamin C in my youth formula, that raises DHEA 60%. Finally, by age 50, women mostly have gone through menopause and they stop making progesterone. So I had this idea almost 20 years ago now that, well, maybe men stop making progesterone at that age too. So I took 12 men who had very low levels of DHEA and I gave them natural progesterone cream, just as women are sometimes giving it after menopause. And lo and behold, they all became, well, they had restored libido, let's say, and everybody was happy except one wife. And that raised their DHEA 60%. So these four things of the ring of fire, the magnesium lotion, the youth formula, and the progesterone cream actually together raise DHEA 250%. And that for most people is remarkably energizing and health restoring. Now, being in the sun whenever possible does it, and exercise does it, and guess what else can do it? Laughing. Even without anything to laugh at, artificial laughing for 15 minutes will raise your DHEA.
Mm-hmm. Well, there have been stories about people restoring their health with laughing and watching comedies, and
Exactly.
so that must be the link. Then is what they're doing is raising this the level of this hormone that's so very, very important.
Absolutely. Now, the other thing that is critically important in every known disease, people are deficient in oxytocin. Oxytocin is the nurturing bonding hormone. Now, if you were wanted as a child and your mother, was happy during the pregnancy and welcomed you in and you had a good childhood, you're likely to have a high level of oxytocin. However, again, depression and anxiety interfere with making it. And so, again, with every known disease, not just the anxiety, depression, or whatever, but heart disease and diabetes and whatever, you are deficient in oxytocin. So I've also found a circuit in the body that I call the ring of air, in stimulating that, not with needles, not with electricity, even, but with a mixture of oils that stimulate it, takes you literally 30 seconds a day, will restore your oxytocin level. And it is phenomenally successful in 80% of people for depression and anxiety.
So when the depression and anxiety lifts, then the body increases the production of oxytocin?
Yes. Or you can stimulate the oxytocin, which gets rid of the depression and anxiety.
Okay.
Interestingly, if you take DHEA and oxytocin, in my opinion, they are the two balancing hormones. Now, you also, of course, need serotonin. I call serotonin the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed wake-up hormone. So if you have a good diet and you sleep well, you're likely to wake up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed in the morning with a good level of serotonin. But there's certain nutritional things you can do to add to that. At the top of that list is tryptophan. In fact, tryptophan is better than all the antidepressant drugs in the world. I gave a talk on this at the DeBakey conference, a big surgical congress back in the mid-70s. The National Enquirer picked it up. I didn't know they were even there. The next week, it was their front page cover article on tryptophan. Within 24 hours, the country was sold out of tryptophan.
Oh my gosh.
And within 48 hours, the wholesale price had doubled. But tryptophan with some B complex and a tiny, tiny bit of lithium orotate will also restore serotonin, the most important bright-eyed, bushy-tailed wake-up hormone.
Okay. So all of this, I think, has a major impact in aging. And, as we get older, we want to be healthy all the time, but especially as we start to get older. What advice do you have for people? Like you said, your goal was to live to be 100, and you're well on your way, and obviously very active and involved and enjoying life. What is your advice to other people who want to do the same thing?
Well, of course, you have to have these good health habits that we've already talked about. At the top of my list for that one is do not be overweight.
Mm-hmm.
Overweight is the number one cause of premature death in this country. Over 72% of Americans are overweight, with 36% officially obese. Obese, by definition, is a body mass index of 30 or above. So that's 40 pounds or more over your ideal weight. The ideal body mass index, and everybody should know this and check their own, is 18 to 24.
Mm.
My body mass index is 21. And it's been 21 or 22 all my life, I think. But if you get above 24, you increase your risk of every known disease, especially hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. So keep your body mass index between 18 and 24. And do not smoke. Today, even in adulthood, 22% of people still smoke. I mean, until about 30 years ago, smoking was the number one cause of premature death. Now it's number two. And again, exercise, move. Now, interestingly, I don't know if people can see me, but my
Mhm.
arms,
Yes, we can see you.
music conductors live longer than any other profession. It's more important for your heart to do this than it is to even walk or run.
Mm. Mm.
So, of
Okay.
my 2 hours of exercise every morning, 30 minutes is doing this vigorously while I'm standing on a vibratory plate. Vibe machine is, vibrates your whole body. I use it between 30 and 50 cycles per minute while I'm doing this. That's just part of my 2 hour program every day. But for people who don't like to exercise, the Vibe machine with moving your arms is ideal.
Hmm. Is the Vibe machine something you have invented?
No, I happened to learn about it in 1994, and I bought one at the Power Vibe back in 1994. It ran out a couple of years ago, and I replaced it with one you can buy on the internet on Amazon for only $250. I mean, it's just Confidence, CONFIDENCE, the Vibe machine.
Okay.
It is wonderful, and it's just
Okay.
as good as the Power Vibe was. And back in 1994, it cost $2,400.
Whoa. Okay. Well, cognitive health is really, really important as well as physical health. And as we get older, there's more concern about dementia, about Alzheimer's. What have you found to be the best ways to preserve mental health, and any new findings or inventions that might help with that?
Two things at the top of my list is actually B complex.
Hmm.
Way back 40 or 50 years ago, you could get by with so-called the recommended daily intake, which was one to 2.5 milligrams of each of the basic Bs. Today, you need at least 25 milligrams of B1, B2, B3, B6, etc., because of toxicity.
Mm-hmm.
In this country, there are two phenomenal toxic compounds. One is fluoride. One of the greatest evils in the world, in my opinion, is the dental industry with the introduction of fluoride in the water and silver mercury fillings in the teeth. Both of them are totally poison. The sperm count in men since the introduction of fluoride in the water has decreased from 150 million to 40 million. Men become infertile when it gets down to 20 million. In fact, I've been working with men with sperm counts below 20 million since the 1990s. If we don't get rid of fluoride in the city water within the next 20 years, there won't be any more children in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Second is Roundup. It's an even more toxic compound, and 75% of the rain in this country now has Roundup in it. In fact, several years ago, there was a study done in California, in the wine country, where they measured the Roundup content in organic wines versus non-organic wines. The organic wines had 35% as much Roundup as the regular wines because it rains on them.
Mm.
In my opinion, it is unethical and semantically improper to call anything organic unless it was raised in a greenhouse with filtered water and filtered air.
Mm. Mm.
I wouldn't pay 2 cents extra for something called organic now because of Roundup on it. I mean, I live on a farm. I raise my own vegetables, but I can't keep Roundup out of the rain.
Hmm. Do you think, are these types of toxicity related to our cognitive abilities as we are maturing, shall we
Absolutely.
say? Okay.
Not only that, but the immune system. There are
Mhm.
4,000 cases dawdling in court now against Monsanto for introducing Roundup and causing cancer. So
Mm.
at the top of the list, it damages your immune system, and second to that is it damages your ability to think straight. So
Hmm.
it's a major contributor to Parkinsonism and Alzheimer's.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow. Um, I also wanted to ask about you've done a lot of pioneering work in medical intuition. And we'd love to hear your insights on that field and what advice you might have for people in developing their own intuition.
Ah, yes. As a matter of fact, at 5 p.m. Central Time tomorrow, I'm starting my next course on medical intuition. It's all virtual, of course, and people can still sign up for it by tomorrow morning. But it's a 6-month course. We'll meet once a month for an hour, and I will give them homework assignments to work on in between. And over the course of the 6 months, 60 patient names where they are to make their own diagnosis. But in addition to that, I will be teaching sometime in this year, just developing your own personal intuition. I've got over 40
Mm-hmm.
mental exercises for increasing your own intuitive abilities. To me, all creativity, all science, all music, all art is the result of good intuition.
Okay. What are some of the techniques that you advise people to develop their own intuition?
Well, interestingly, at the top of my list is autogenic training because quieting the mind,
Mm-hmm.
detaching from worry and concern. In fact, my favorite word in the world is detach.
Hmm.
I can't change the weather. I can't change government. I can't change a lot of things. Rather than fret over it, I said, let it go. Who cares? It's not none of my business. And that's what autogenic training trains you to do. Now,
Mm-hmm.
there are many, many, many different techniques. Chanting, Om, or love, put the brain into the right state of mind. Now, over the last several years, I have also concentrated on putting the brain into gamma. The, the brain functions at different rhythms, if you will. We've known this since the 1920s. When you're learning, if you're paying attention to me right now, not wandering off somewhere else, your brain will be in beta frequency. Beta frequency is somewhere between 13 and the low 20s per minute. If you get up to 40 cycles, that is called gamma. That's in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
It was first discovered in Buddhist monks who meditate 8 hours a day.
Mm.
It is the state of absolute peaceful joy and detachment. Several years ago, I had created a new electrical gadget for restoring the natural electricity of the body, now called the Shealy-Sorin gamma, Gamma, PEMF, pulsed electromagnetic frequency. I had this sudden idea, well, maybe it puts the brain into gamma, and indeed it does. It's the only gadget that I know at the moment that actually puts the brain into the frequency of gamma. And when you put the brain into gamma, you are not asleep by any means, but you are just there. Who cares? So I took 10 long-standing opioid narcotic addicts who'd not been able to be free of their cravings since they became addicted. They've been in and out, in and out, in and out. 10 of them. We gave them this device to use 1 to 2 hours a day. They are now 37 months free of craving. 37, 3 years and a month since we began that study. Every one of them has gotten free of their addiction. In fact, one of the women, after 2 years free, got pregnant and had a healthy child recently.
Wow.
And so gamma PEMF is my favorite creation so far. Right now, I'm in the midst of a project. It's going to take me another month to 6 weeks of seeing whether gamma, PIMP, not only puts the brain into the frequency of gamma, but produces anandamide. Anandamide is a normal bliss hormone. Most people don't have a lot of anandamide, but we're going to have soon. We'll have 96 cases where we've tested the anandamide before and after, using a number of things, including the gamma PIMP and some of my other toys, because being able to put the brain into that frequency by itself can help immensely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So are there any gadgets? I love that term that because you have completed a number of inventions that you wanted to show us or share with us tonight.
Well, my first invention was TENS, transcutaneous electronerve stimulation. Still used all over the world. It's still useful. If you put the electrodes on either side of it or below and above the pain, most of the time it will turn off the pain. But you can't always, the pain may be more diffuse than that. So there's certain reflex points. I have a dozen of them that you can attach the electrodes. Like if you put the electrodes behind the ankle on both sides of the Achilles tendon down at the ankle, that's bladder 60 and kidney 3 on both sides. Often, within 20 minutes, that can relieve pain all the way up to the head, but especially in the lower half of the body. So TENS unit is simple. When I first developed them back in the 60s and early 70s, they cost $500 or $600. Now you can buy them for $50 or $60 over the internet with no prescription. Core stimulation is still used all over the world. That's for the most complicated of all things. It requires a specialist to do that, but it's infinitely safer than any drug in the world. In 1976, I introduced cranial electrostimulation. It's similar to TENS, except you put the electrodes on the temples and use it in the morning. And if you use this cranial electrostimulator in the morning, it raises your serotonin and your beta endorphin, the natural narcotic. And we'll soon know whether it also raises anandamide, because we're including that in our study. But the cranial stimulator is available. Now, it is a prescription item still, but it relieves anxiety and depression, increase and helps insomnia in at least 80% of people. Those are some of my earlier inventions. And then, of course, there is my current favorite, the gamma PEMF device, but we also have a scalar device, and that's another of my favorite topics. According to quantum physicists, all empty space in the entire universe is filled with scalar energy. And that empty space all around us, in that empty space the size of a helium molecule, the smallest thing we know physically, there's enough energy to boil the ocean. So there is Tesla is the one who really organized this and discovered that using certain kinds of focused scalar energy, he could produce free electricity. But Rockefeller and Edison did not want free electricity, so they did everything in their power to destroy it. But several years ago, I created a scalar device because I had an idea that it would clear the body of free radicals. And as another negative chemical in the body, most people know that cortisone is not good if you overproduce it. But there's another one called adrenomedullin. And a study came out of Italy showing that people who live in a certain area in southwestern Italy live longer than anyone in the world. And I thought, well, maybe it's the topography, maybe the scalar energy focus there is in some of these other long-lived places. And so we had a group of I think 24 people who sat in a room with my scalar device just 9 hours once a week for a month. In a healthy person, adrenomedullin is between 0 and 10. You don't want it. It's very bad for the body. It's one of the most harmful chemicals in the body. My average patient started with one over 150
Oh my
adrenal
goodness.
measurement.
Oh.
After 4 weeks, it was down over 50%.
Mm.
We then brought them back and had it just test them. You can test free radicals in the urine. So we tested free radicals in the urine and had them sit there for just 3 hours, and free radicals came down a whopping 40% in that 3 hours. So, and we've done lots and lots of work with reducing free radicals. The other interesting thing about using the scalar for free radical reduction is it has one other very interesting side effect. It doesn't totally take away gray hair, but it cuts it down by about 50%. It's really interesting.
This is the scalar device?
Yes, we call it the adrenoscaler.
Okay.
And I have one in my office, so it's directed at my chair where I sit all day, and I have one in my bedroom, and it's directed towards across the top of my bed. And we've got a number of couples using it that way.
This is all fascinating. I mean, all of the advances, and again, we're so concerned about our health and alternatives to, in many ways, traditional medicine, which focuses on fixing things. But this is along with the Casey concept. I mean, we're talking about bringing things back into balance,
Right.
using some very non-toxic and easy ways to do this.
Yes, my concept is in acute illness, medicine may save your life.
Mm-hmm.
The emergency room and the hospital and the doctor can do wonders for you in acute illness. But if it's not cured within 3 months, or at least a whole heck of a lot better within 3 months, in my opinion, it becomes chronic. Now, officially, medicine doesn't consider it chronic until it becomes 6 months. But I personally do not know any chronic illness for which I would allow conventional medicine. Every known drug has negative side effects. Let's just take antihypertensive drugs. 40% of Americans have hypertension. Using 3 antihypertensive drugs, you have a 45% chance of controlling your hypertension and almost 100% chance of chronic fatigue and in males erectile dysfunction, but who cares anyway, you don't have any energy. I can control hypertension and wean people off those 3 drugs safely 100% of the time without a single antihypertensive drug.
Mm.
There are a number of major papers on antidepressant drugs. Antidepressant drugs do help serious depression, but never cure. They can just relieve it partially. I can cure depression 99+% of the time with some of my nutritional and electrical gadgets safely, totally safely. So I'm not opposed to acute medicine. I personally don't do any medication, won't prescribe them chronically for anybody. Now, the only exception to that I want to make one little say is thyroid. I don't consider thyroid a medication. I consider it a supplement.
Uh-huh. Okay. We have some questions from the audience. So this has been fascinating. I know it's made us all think, and we've learned a lot of new things tonight. But I'd like to ask some of these questions of you. Here's the first one. For people with white matter that shows on brain MRI scans that indicate silent strokes and maybe a contributing factor to Alzheimer's, what methods, herbs, or recommendations could benefit these individuals in restoring and supporting those effective areas of the brain?
Again, the vitamins for immune health are talked about, especially B complex, maybe even 100 milligrams a day of B complex. I want to give you my very favorite case of this particular kind of problem. A 60-year-old man had the most advanced Parkinsonism I've ever seen. He was brought in a wheelchair with 2 people holding him by the elbows. He couldn't put his feet on the floor. He couldn't answer a question I asked him. I sent him home on B complex and the use of my cranial pimp for 1 or 2 hours a day. 1 month later, he walked 40 feet into my clinic.
Mm.
I had a woman with early Alzheimer's. She couldn't tell you the time of day, let alone the day of the week. Again, within a month, she was perfectly oriented. So it can take up to 3 months, but B complex and the cranial PIMP device can restore normal brain function. And sometimes I've done it after a small stroke.
Hmm. Are you saying a cranial TENS device,
No,
TENS?
the cranial PIMP device,
Oh,
the pulse electromagnetic gamma device that I mentioned several
ah,
times.
okay. The
You
gamma
just lay it right on top of
PEN.
your head.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's safe. The only contraindication is a pacemaker.
Okay. Okay. What the supplement obviously is very important, and we understand supplements, but what do you think is going on with the cranial stimulation? Is it restoring neural pathways, or what's actually happening in the brain?
Well, first of all, it helps put it back into normal state. In an ordinary healthy brain, every cell has a minus 70 millivolt charge on it. I'm okay. If it goes down to minus 60 or minus 50, they become hyperactive and trouble begins. If it goes up to minus 90, they are even the opposite. They're not work at all. The cranial PIMP restores the minus 70 millivolt charge on every cell in your body. So you can use it on your foot for diabetic neuropathy, for instance. That's I first
Hmm.
started working with the PIMP device was to treat diabetic neuropathy, reversing that. But it also can help reverse Alzheimer's. Back in 1961, I worked for 9 months with Sir John Eccles, a neurophysiologist, and we worked on the plasticity of the brain. The brain, remember, every cell in your body is replaced within a maximum of 7 years. That's the brain. It takes 7 years for the neurons to replace themselves. The skin and some of your white blood cells and those things are replaced within days.
Mhm.
But if you keep everything healthy, then your telomeres will regrow. Telomeres are the tips of your DNA. In a healthy individual, they shrink 1% every year of life. So our normal genetics says we should live 100 years. But over the last 12 years, I've been working with regrowing or regenerating the telomeres. They can be measured, and we actually now can regrow your telomeres 3.5% a year. So over a
Hmm.
10-year period, you can go 30 years younger.
Wow. How do you regrow the telomeres?
Well, my favorite technique at the moment is to stimulate the rings of fire, earth, and crystal with the bliss oils. It takes you a minute and a half a day. It's totally safe. And we've got years of experience regrowing the telomeres with fire, earth, and crystal bliss.
Okay. So here's another question. What are the things that people born with weak constitutions, um, that these folks who, tend to get sick year after year, what should they doing to start strengthening themselves at the very root and the core, in order to be healthier?
Well, of course, they take all the stuff we talked about earlier for the immune system. That's at the top of the list. Secondly, they develop all of the essential habits: no smoking, normal body mass index, eating, we didn't talk about this adequately perhaps, eating a minimum of 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. I actually start my day with 20 servings of fruits and vegetables in a slush.
Mm.
And you need preferably 8 or 10 servings a day. Everybody does. If they'll do those things and autogenic training, you can restore a lot of function.
I'm sorry, I missed what you said. What kind of training?
Autogenic.
Autogenic
Remember, we
training.
talked about
Okay,
that earlier. Yes.
great. Okay. Okay. Um, and here's a question. What if your body doesn't synthesize B vitamins and you get a negative reaction? Is there a way to normalize your body first, or is there another supplement or another option for you?
Well, my one of my favorite energy medicine approaches is intravenous vitamin C.
Hmm.
I've been using intravenous vitamin C since 1979 to treat cancer and chronic Lyme disease and fibromyalgia, for instance. And anytime a person gets an acute viral illness, I would give them a minimum of 50 grams of vitamin C. Now, when I give the vitamin C, you give it with B complex and methylfolate and methyl B12 and some calcium and magnesium, etc. It's called a Myers cocktail. But I've done really many hundreds of these, and we've cured a number of cancers with it, as
Wow.
well as treated all kinds of degenerative disease.
Okay.
I've never seen an allergic reaction to it intravenously.
Okay. Okay. And going back for a minute to your advice about weight, what kind of a diet would you recommend for someone who wants to get to a normal weight? You just
Ah,
commented on the fruits and vegetables, but what other advice would you give? Um,
no wheat,
no wheat?
no rice, no white potatoes, no sugar whatsoever, and exercise.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, we're getting kind of close to the end of our discussion. This has been amazing. I have taken copious notes myself. We have been recording and we'll make the recording available to the people who are with us tonight. Just let me ask Dr. Shealy if you had any other, is there anything that we haven't covered tonight that you think is really important, knowing that our audience wants to be as healthy as possible for as long as possible?
Faith. One of my favorite statements is keep the faith, baby. Know that no matter how bad things are, you can detach from the negativity and put yourself in touch with God and the divine.
Mhm.
You know, one of my favorite concepts from Edgar Cayce uh, is a search for God. That to me is mysticism. Mysticism is the search for God.
And we do have those groups, study groups going on. I agree with you completely. Being involved in a Search for God study group and working with that material that Casey gave to people who said, you know, we want to be psychic, we want to be like you. And he said, well, it's of the soul. You need to develop your soul and your spirituality. And we're doing those groups remotely now. So if anyone's interested, I think I'm sorry, Dr. Shealy, what were you going to say? Did
I'm
you have,
sorry.
did I interrupt you? I'm
No,
sorry.
no, that's fine. I was done.
Okay. Okay, great. We have some information on how you could, whoops, I see a couple more questions here. Let me see if I can get those quickly. Let's see. How do you stimulate the ring of fire and ring of air?
Okay, they're little roll-on bottles, just about this big. They're about the size of your middle finger, and it's a roll-on bottle, and you just touch. It comes with photographs to show you where to put it. And let's assume this was one of the points. You just push it in and twist it, and that's all. It takes 1 or 2 seconds for each point.
Okay. And we're going to have some information on how you can get more information on that in just a second. And there's another question here. Did you have anything to say about maybe making the blood-brain barrier less leaky?
Well, that's a very fascinating question. And again, everything that you do that strengthens your immune system and your brain function in a useful way helps the blood-brain barrier as well. Yes,
Okay. So all of the things that you've been saying.
exactly.
We have a slide with some information on how you can get more info and get some of these products that and devices that Dr. Shealy's been talking about. Let's see. I think we skipped. Here you are. And someone had also asked about being part of the intuition class. If you can go to Dr. Shealy's website, www.normshealy.com. And is there anything else you wanted to say, Dr. Shealy, for people who wanted to get in touch with you, get more information about what you've been talking about tonight?
Well, they can always call the office in the morning if they have trouble with the internet, being what it is these days sometimes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can't remember out of my head the 800 number. It's 417-467-2124. Tracy will be in by 8 a.m. Central Time, and she's here from 8 till 4.
Okay. So that's 417-467-2124
Yes,
to reach Dr. Shealy's office. And you're in Missouri, correct? In
right.
the central part of the US? Okay, great. And if you want to, and we all should be laughing right now, right? Raising our immune system and giving a great big as
No,
we
actually, you said Missouri is part of the United States.
yeah. It is part of the US, thank goodness. And if you'd like to be a further part of our community, we here in Southern California, we have a newsletter, we have study groups, we have a Facebook and a meetup page, a website, and also a Casey, California website, all kinds of ways that you can get information more about Dr. Shealy, more about the programs and Edgar Casey. And finally, I just wanted to mention our next program, which is with Dr. Linda Larkey. We're going to have it in approximately a month, Sunday on the 21st. And Linda Larkey and I also work together at the A.R.E. clinic. She went on to become a professor and academic, college professor, having a wonderful career. I think it was perfect, much like you, Dr. Shealy, studying alternative medicine and the new research that's showing us what really keeps us healthy. So she'll be also bringing in some of the new science, the things that you might have wondered about, what's really working. So that'll be on Sunday, February 21st. So that concludes our program tonight. We'll send out the recording to everybody who was on tonight. And we thank you so very, very much. And thank you, Dr. Shealy, so much for giving us this amazing information. We just need to take it with us and follow through. Thank you.
My great pleasure. I love the A.R.E.
Me too. It's a great group. And again, thank you so much for your generosity. Okay, good night. And we hope to see you again.